Hey guys, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about this Sonos Port. Now, the Sonos Port is actually a streamer without an amplification built in, much like the Sonos M, just that it can't drive speakers. So today we're going to be looking at some of the differences between the two devices and what 7 things you can do with the Sonos Port that you might not be able to do with anything else. And one of the capabilities include enabling Bluetooth connectivity to your Sonos system, and that includes LDAC as well as APTX-HD. So if you're interested to find out, stay on. As customary in all my videos, I try to give you the answer to my videos upfront, so you don't have to stay around throughout the whole video. So very quickly, this is what I have here. Now, this Sonos Port, there are 7 use cases which I thought you can actually use the Sonos Port for. A lot of you won't find a use for it, but maybe, all right? So for the first use case, it is the capability to output to a power amp or an integrated amp. For the line out, it has variable or fixed or pass-through so that you can actually pass it through to an integrated amplifier at a fixed level if you so require. You can also transform your old analog devices, maybe it's a cassette player, maybe it's a turntable, caveat on that later, into the Sonos system such that you can play throughout your whole Sonos ecosystem. You can stream music from your computer or from your Nest, but you can do that with some other Sonos speakers as well. So if you don't have any other Sonos speaker, this is one way you could do it. And because it has a digital output on this Sonos Port, you are able to use an external DAC to change the sound profile if you don't quite like what the Sonos sound profile sounds like. You can possibly connect a TV with a line out, RCA line level or phono headphone out into this device if you don't have a soundbar from Sonos or the Sonos amp. But I wouldn't recommend that because there's a lag and a delay there. Or you could set up a Sonos Net, but again, any of the Sonos device that you have, as long as you plug an Ethernet cable inside, it will set up a Sonos Net on its own. So the only use case is when your space that you're trying to set up the Sonos Net next to the router, you don't have much space, you can't put a full-size speaker there, then you put this, but this is $450, not quite the Sonos Net device that you want to put. And lastly, the most important point that we're going to touch on is that you're able to introduce Bluetooth, high resolution Bluetooth, APTX-HD or LDAC into your Sonos ecosystem, but that requires extra hardware. If you're interested in that, if that's something that you want to hear about, do stay on for the rest of the video. Otherwise, you can stop the video and go and think about all these ideas that I'm implanting in your head. Go and try it out and see whether you can make your Sonos Port work harder for you. Or if you don't have a Sonos Port, and if any of the use cases I've listed above helps you, you go right ahead and experiment with it. Okay, so before we go on, I'm going to touch a little bit on what this device is in comparison with the Sonos amp. Now this Sonos amp that I'm going to put up here, I have it deployed already, so I'm not going to take it out because it's going to be quite messy, and I have it wired all the way to my ceiling speakers. So I'm going to leave the Sonos amp where it is. I'm going to put a picture up here so that you can see and compare for yourself. So this is the picture of the Sonos amp back side, the back panel, back side. Okay, and this is what you have on the Sonos Port. So a few notable differences. The first one is that the Sonos amp has an HDMI in. It actually serves like a soundbar. Okay, but this Sonos Port, it doesn't take inputs from HDMI out. Of course, there's amplification on the Sonos amp, so you can plug in a pair of speakers, 2 pairs of speakers, or in some cases even 3 pairs of speakers for the Sonos amp to drive, and the Sonos Port has no amplification, and therefore it has the line output. Again, the Sonos amp has a subwoofer out, so if you're going to be wanting to connect a subwoofer, you can put it up there. With the Sonos amp, you can actually set up a 4.1 setup for your sound system, for your surround sound. You can pair a pair of surrounds or even another amp to create a surround channel. The front, handled by the Sonos amp, will create a virtual center channel, and you can plug in a third-party subwoofer which will act as the dot 1 in your surround sound setup. The Sonos Port, you can't do that. And for the Sonos Port, you have no touch controls in the front at all. So the Sonos M, if you switch it to the front, you'll see that there are the 3 touch buttons in front, the pause and play, the volume down, volume up, and you can also swipe to skip track or swipe back to backtrack. So obviously there are quite a lot of features that the Sonos Port is missing from the Sonos M, and most notable being the amplification on board, but it does give you a few other functionalities that you do not get with the Sonos M. So the most important is that there is a digital output here. This is a coaxial 75 ohm digital output. So if you want to, you can skip your DAC within the Sonos and pass it to an off-board DAC, an outboard DAC, or if your amplifier has an integrated DAC, you could also pass that through. It also has line out, so you need a line out because it has no amplification. So what you need to do is to line out to an amplifier or a power amp, which will drive your speakers. For the amplifier, it has a 12 volt trigger. So this is a 12 volt trigger. It uses a 3.5 mm mono plug. You can link this up to your amplifier, and most amplifiers with the 12 volt trigger will be able to turn itself on and off along with your Sonos Port. So when it has a signal and it's playing something, it will turn the power amp on, and if not, it will turn it off. So now I'd like to cover all the use cases that I've summarized up in the video above. And the first use case is enabled by the fact that this Sonos Port has line out RCA ports. So this is a stereo output, and what you can do is to power a pair of integrated amps or power amp together with your speakers. So it has both variable output as well as fixed output. Fixed output will go to an integrated amp so that you can control the volume on the integrated amp. If you use a variable output, you are controlling the volume on this Sonos Port itself through the Sonos S2 app, and the power amp will pick up the signal and amplify from there. Second is that you can transform your old analog equipment, be it a cassette player if you are feeling kind of nostalgic, or a record player. Now the record player, well, actually it is older than the cassette player, but cassette player is more or less dead. The record player, on the other hand, has been enjoying quite a bit of revival in this particular decade. Throughout the last decade even. But one thing to note is that this particular pair of inputs, it will not have a phono stage preamp built in. So your phono player, your record player, needs to have a preamplifier which is built in, or you need an external preamplifier between the turntable and this device so that you can jack up the volume a little bit before it comes to this. The third use case is that you can use this Sonos Port to stream music from your computer or your NAS. Now, again, that functionality can be replicated across other Sonos speakers, even on the Sonos One, on the Sonos S2 app. But if you don't have any of those devices, and if you just want the convenience of using the S2 app, which is a pretty good app and it has a lot of streaming services that is being packed in, then buying this device along with pairing it up with your amplifier and your speaker setup, you'll be able to access all those music files on your computer or on your NAS. The fourth functionality is the ability to actually add an off-board DAC. So this has a digital output here. This is a coaxial digital output. So if you don't like the DAC that Sonos provides and you don't like the sound signature from that, well, output it with something else, maybe the Cambridge Audio CXN or something that you prefer, and you'll be able to use it. But bear in mind, you still need your amplifier and your speaker from the DAC. The fifth use case is to connect your output that is coming from the headphone jack or the 3.5 mm line out from your TV or your projector. Now, this, while you can do it and output into this particular pair of inputs here, I won't recommend, because there's an analog signal which the Sonos Port then has to convert into a digital signal before it can play any sounds at all. So there will be a lag between the TV image, the video, as well as the sound. If you take a look here, this is when I was trying to set up the Sonos Port. If you look at the Sonos Port setup, you're actually able to set the delay for the audio signal. So you can set it anywhere from 75 milliseconds to 2000 milliseconds. They would recommend that the 2000 milliseconds, you don't do it unless you have no video reference. Otherwise, the video and audio is going to appear very, very much out of sync. But even 75 milliseconds, to me, it is bordering on unbearable already. So it's not something that I'll recommend, but if you're not fussy about that, you can, in a pinch, enable that connection. Another bad idea that I have for the Sonos Port is to use this Sonos Port as a Sonos Net broadcast station. Any of the Sonos speakers that you have, including the Play ones, including even the $99 IKEA Symphonics bookshelf speakers, you can plug an Ethernet cable in. And once you plug it in, it will broadcast its own 2.4G Sonos Net network, which is pretty reliable, pretty stable, and all your other Sonos speakers will then connect to that network. You could use this, but why would you use a $450 device to do that when you can plug a $99 speaker and achieve the same result? Well, probably because if next to your router you don't have space and you can't fit in the full speaker and you can only put this device in, then yes, but it's $450 unless you bought it already and you're trying to justify spending $450 on this guy. The last use case, enabling high-res sounds into your Sonos ecosystem. Now, this requires another device. I was careful trying to name this video because I don't want it to appear like a clickbait. Now, but what you need is that you need a Bluetooth receiver. So a Bluetooth receiver will usually have some kind of line out which you can then use to plug into the line out of the Sonos Port. And once you plug it into the line out of the Sonos Port, you can then take that signal and broadcast it to any of your Sonos speakers around the house. So what kind of device am I looking at? So this is a FiiO M6 music player. This music player is a pretty versatile piece of equipment, and it allows you to use it like a music player. It actually has APTX-HD and LDAC built in for the Bluetooth protocol. And you can even use something like the Sony M4, XM1000, X1000 M4. Can't ever remember. Well, this is the pair of headphones that I'm looking at. And if you use this player together with this, which I've done a review on this before, you have your LDAC magic and it will be able to broadcast in high resolution wireless sounds. So what you can enable this M6 to do is it acts as a Bluetooth receiver as well. So I've taken some screenshots. You can take a look at the screenshots. What you can do is you will need a cable like this. This is a 3.5mm phono jack to an RCA stereo output. So I plug this here into the receiver, and at the back of the Sonos Port, I will then plug it into the line in. Okay, and when it's plugged into the line in, basically this unit right here will become your Bluetooth gateway into the Sonos ecosystem. So for whatever reasons, if you're using another player, if you have a phone that supports APTX-HD or the LDAC protocols, you can then use that Bluetooth into this setup here, and you'll be able to hear that sound broadcast throughout your Sonos network. But bear in mind, the protocol between this Sonos device and other Sonos speakers are still not going to be high-res at all. So Sonos has stayed away from high-res music, nothing above 48 kilohertz sampling rate for a very long time. So anything that's 16-bit, it will be able to play. More than that, no. But what that means is that you have another device that is capable of reading all those high-resolution files, and you are able to play it through Bluetooth, APTX-HD, or LDAC, almost in a lossless manner to this device here, which will then broadcast it throughout your entire Sonos network. So I hope that gives you an idea of what you can use the Sonos Port for. I think this is a very nice device. It's one of the smallest devices, a lot smaller than the Sonos Amp that you are looking at. This is the power supply that they have. It uses a wall wart uses a DC power supply, plugs it in, and this is your gateway to the Sonos ecosystem, which will enable Bluetooth, APTX-HD, and LDAC high resolution wireless streaming. I am not advocating that this will sound great or better. In fact, when I tried it out, to be completely honest with you, I did not hear any significant difference at all. If anything, it was a little bit more finicky because I had to use another player on my phone to actually play the sound. I needed another player that was able to pick up the songs from my Nest or from my computer before I could Bluetooth to this and connect it to the Sonos Port. To me, it just wasn't worth it. If you wanted, really wanted to do that, I guess this is the device that you can go for, but otherwise, this is a $450 piece of equipment. There is no built-in amplifier. I am not very sure. I'm going to recommend it to most of you users out there. Some of you users will find great value in this, but depending on your use case, if you just want ease and convenience, buy any of the Sonos 1, Sonos 5s, even the Beam or the Arc, and it will serve you pretty well. In short, if you have an old amplifier lying around, then this is your friend. If you don't have an old amplifier but only have a pair of speakers, then by all means get the Sonos Amp, because it has a 125 watts per channel amplifier, which is built into the Sonos Amp. But again, that costs about $700, so it's $250 extra on top of this, which in my opinion, it is actually money well spent. That is, if you actually get past the fact that this is pricey at $450 to begin with. So before we end the video, a little bit on what you can't do with this. You can't actually set this up as a surround sound channel. So you can't go to your Sonos Arc or your Sonos Amp and try to add this as surround. It won't work. Well, because surround sound levels, they need to be kind of fixed, so it doesn't know whether you're going to connect to a integrated amplifier or a power amplifier, and the volume control is there, so it doesn't really fit in as a pair of surround speakers. And bear in mind, if you want to connect a turntable, you need a turntable with a preamp that is built in, the phono stage is built in, or you need preamp to drive it. So that is all I have on this piece of equipment here. It took me a long time to get around to talking about this piece of equipment because it is just not something that is very commonly used. Is it the most versatile streaming platform component for your stereo and receiver? Yeah, possibly, but only if you are quite a hardcore Sonos fan. Otherwise, $450, think a little bit harder. So that's all I have for today's episode. I hope I have helped you get a little bit more insight into this piece of equipment. I know it's been a year since this was launched, so it's hardly new news or new review. But you know, my channel is all about wireless audio, wireless audiophile setup, and I focus a lot on Sonos. Seems a little bit amiss if I were not to cover this piece of equipment. So if you have found today's video useful, do consider subscribing to the channel to hear more about these kind of stuff. For wireless audio, for Sonos specifically, I might be getting a Klipsch 400, Cinema 400 soundbar, or one of those variants. I'll go and have a listen and see whether that stacks up to any of the Sonos Beam or the Sonos Arc setup that we might have. I might do a video on that in the next month or so, depending. If you have found this video useful, also do consider dropping me a small contribution in my coffee fund. So I'm going to put up a QR code here. If you scan this QR code, it will take you to my Patreon account. So from my Patreon account, you can drop a small contribution to reward me for the work and the testing that I do on all these Sonos products and wireless audio products. In an upcoming video, I'm going to do a short variation from what I usually do, and it is going to be talking about, this Secret Lab chair here. I recently bought a Secret Lab Omega and a Secret Lab Titan. Why? Because I couldn't decide whether I wanted PU or the soft weave, and I couldn't decide whether I wanted the bigger size or the smaller standard size on the Omega. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, do stay subscribed, do watch out for the upcoming video. It is not about audio equipment, but you know, it's anything that tickles my fancy. And I hope that you will enjoy that as well. We spend a lot of time working from home, so the chair is kind of to make my setup a little bit more comfortable because of the amount of time I spend in front of my computer. And 2 weeks ago, I told you that I remodeled the room a little bit. So this is my new setup. This is kind of how I'm going to be doing my videos from now on. I might need to change it such that I can showcase the products, but otherwise, you will be able to see that I have access to the Sonos 5, the Sonos Arc is here, the projector is here, the screen is here. I hope that helps my video production a little bit better in the sense that I don't have to be moving all the things around so much. Oh, by the way, the Sonos subs are there. I have 2 subs set up. If you're interested in dual sub setup, do check out my past videos on the dual sub setup. The Gen 2 is here, the Gen 3 is here. They're on the floor. But okay, I'm rambling on. I'll see you in my next video.